so many of the challenges our young people and their families face were systemic, and it was really about how do we shift the conditions so that we don't even have to create or have an Inspire STL. And that really led me to think about power. How do we build power? How do we make sure more folks have power and they're able to use that for good? WePower can really be a catalyst for some of the conversations towards more Black and brown folks being able to drive the change they want to see in their community.
This is where it all begins, so say goodbye to all your fears, all your doubts. This is where they die. This is where we come to win, we come to fly. This is where we make our dreams come to life. Welcome to Innovation City.
Welcome to Innovation City, a podcast featuring the innovators, creators, and disruptors who are changing the way that business happens. My name is Tyler Kelly, and I'm here with my co-host, Miss Leanne Buchanan.
Hey, everybody.
And we're coming to you from Slam Agency St. Louis, and today's a really special day because we are joined by Miss Charli Cooksey.
Hi, everyone. How are you?
Welcome.
Well, Charli, we're really excited to talk a little bit about your work, your why, and your impact. I was looking at your bio and I was like, oh, this is going to be a juicy conversation. So before we talk a little bit about your work, for those that don't know, you're the founder and CEO of WePower. And just tell us what WePower is for those that aren't familiar with that organization.
Yeah, so we're a social startup, and we are a little over 2 years old, and we went from being an idea to crawling to flying, turbulence, but we're flying. And our mission is to activate community power, to redesign systems to be just and equitable for all. So when we say community, we're focused on Black and Latinx communities, particularly place-based communities. And when we talk about power, for us, that's the ability to act and self-determine. And so we believe that the more that people activate their power, the more that we're all better off. And if we can activate that power towards new systems, education, economic, health, and justice systems, we can really create a world where everyone's thriving. So that comes to life through supporting everyday folks with becoming leaders who create new solutions and advocate and organize for change. And that also comes to life through investing in entrepreneurs and helping them scale their businesses in the communities that we're doing the work with.
So, Charli, what brought you to that work?
Well, I'm a St. Louis native, born and raised, grew up and still live in North St. Louis City. And my life has really been the tale of two cities within the St. Louis region. And so a lot of my childhood, I really didn't let a day go by, or a day didn't go by where I wasn't navigating North St. Louis City and places like Town and Country and Frontenac, because I grew up playing tennis and studying ballet. And so balancing those two realities within a 24-hour time span every day really helped me realize the disparities between Black folks and white folks, between parts of St. Louis that were west and south compared to parts of St. Louis that were east and north. And that just stuck with me, and it still does to this day, and I navigate those two worlds still. And as I've continued to sort of figure out what my role is, I always ask, what do I do now? So when I came back from college, I started an educational access and leadership development organization called Inspire STL, and that was a really amazing journey to support hundreds of scholars with getting into the best high schools and completing college. And through that, I realized that so many of the challenges our young people and their families face were systemic, and it was really about how do we shift the conditions so that we don't even have to create or have an Inspire STL. And that really led me to think about power. How do we build power? How do we make sure more folks have power and they're able to use that for good? So transition from that startup, ended up at another social startup called Fort Ferguson, focused on policy change and racial equity, and just so many lessons and journeys that led me to the point to say, like, WePower can really be a catalyst for some of the conversations towards more Black and brown folks being able to drive the change they want to see in their community.
And there's so much to unpack there. That idea of disparities. I live in Miami, and from downtown to Overtown, which is a historically Black community, 2 different zip codes, life expectancy differences of like 30 years. Yep. Educational opportunity differences that are significant. Economic disparities that are so striking. And I think that the sad thing is that is not unique. It's in every single city within the United States. And when we talk about power, what's your superpower? If you had to describe it, what would your superpower?
I had a meeting earlier today, and that was the icebreaker.
Ooh.
And so literally people were joking about it the whole meeting. Can I answer more than one?
Yeah.
Of course.
Okay, so the one that is like super random, which I shared earlier, was I have like bionic senses. So I grew up in a 2-family flat where my mom and I lived in one house, and then my aunt lived next door. And whenever I came home, I could smell what my aunt was cooking before I even got to the steps to go up to the house. And so when I would come in her front door, I would ask, like, can I have some steak? Can I have some chicken? And the kitchen is all the way in the back. And so she was always so confused about how I knew. And she was also like, dang, I don't want to share my food with you. So still to this day, I can smell food from a mile away, and I know what kind of food it is, and then I don't mind going to get it. And then the other bionic sense is just sight. So I have a way of seeing spider webs that most people don't see. So I'll be walking down a street, and there will be a spider web at the most random spot, and I'll say, like, stop, you're gonna walk into the spider web, and no one else sees it.
Wow.
Especially on tennis courts, there's always spider webs that people don't realize. So that's the random set of superpowers. And then I would say on a more professional note, and thinking about entrepreneurship, it's vision. So I love visioning, and I get energy from visioning, and I think I'm able to navigate difficult situations because I'm super clear on where we're headed and the fact that, like, we have to get there.
Excellent.
Yeah, I want to unpack this word WEPOWER because I know that it has a significant meaning. I think traditionally when we think of, like, how are we going to help out, underserved areas, it's just typically top down. But your approach is completely different. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it really is about the idea that folks who are experiencing challenges have the solutions within those experiences, and the more that we activate folks to be problem solvers of their own circumstances, of their own communities, the more we'll actually develop the right solutions. So often we navigate a huge sort of catastrophic event, and then we have honestly old white men come in and say, this is what we need to do, and then we'll have another catastrophic event, and we'll wonder why we keep going through this, like, vicious cycle. And I think it's often because the folks who are solving the problems haven't necessarily experienced them. I mean, it's like entrepreneurship. We see that entrepreneurs who have personally been impacted by a challenge are often the ones who develop the best solutions. And so WePower is about everyday people have the power, deserve the right to activate that power to create the change that we need and the change that we want to see.
I just finished a conversation that was really fascinating. It was a community conversation, and my takeaway that I shared with the group was our lived experience is our expertise. And that was to, like, a huge corporation. But that is such a simple but revolutionary concept that I think that WePower really encapsulates. What are some of the challenges that the founders and startups that you're supporting are solving in the community?
Really, I would say simple but important ones. So we have Heiru, they're an urban farm, and so they're addressing what they call food apartheid. So by design, there are places in St. Louis where you can't access organic quality food that helps sustain life. And so they are growing amazing, healthy produce that you can take home and know that there's no chemicals on it, know that it's safe to eat, safe to cook. So that's one company. And I mean, it's a fundamental need, and it's also not rocket science. It's something that should be normal, but it's not normal. Another company that I think is they're all doing really cool work, to be clear. But another company that is solving a problem that I think we need to see scale is Shine in All Shade. So she tells the story way better than me, but she has designed an empowerment and wellness coloring book to address colorism. So there's a lot of nuance to being a woman of color. There's different shades, and there's privilege and lack of privilege that comes with where you fall on that spectrum. And so this coloring book addresses those nuances and those challenges and really encourages women to embrace their shade regardless of what that shade is. So that's really cool to just feel empowered by who you are and the skin that you're in.
I love that. I know Lupita Nyong'o has her new book that's really about that issue. And I think that when we're not proximate, so Brian Stevenson talks a lot about this, but the idea of being proximate to the issues, then we are divorced from them. It's this idea of representation bias. There's so many biases, but that proximity allows us to really understand that while it may seem insignificant for some because it's not their problem, for a lot of people, it's a challenge. And so simple things like colorism, I think, go to self-esteem, to confidence, your ability to have upward mobility, your ability to take advantage of opportunities. But you are also an educator, or you have a background in education. I'd love for you to share with us how your experience at TFA, which most people know as like an educational organization, I know it as a social justice training camp, how that experience really shaped your thinking and to getting to where you are now.
Wait, did you do Teach for America?
I didn't, but I work a lot with TFA folks.
Someone on my team is from Miami and did Teach for America.
Okay, we'll have to jab afterwards.
What was the question?
So your educational I know we got sidetracked, but your background as an educator and your experience at TFA, like how did those things shape your thinking and perspective of where you are now? Yeah,
well, I never had any intentions on becoming a formal educator. I was preparing for law school when I was finishing up my undergraduate degree, and I got the call and I had a 15-minute conversation. I said, okay, forget law school. I'll do Teach for America for 2 years and then go to law school. And then never went to law school because I got so captivated and immersed in the power of education. So I would say for me, being in a classroom and working with and building deep relationships with hundreds of students, that space is, I think, the clearest microcosm of all the challenges that we need to wrestle with at every other level. When you engage with students who are from the same neighborhood as me and see that they have to deal with poverty, to see that they have to deal with violence, gun violence, to see that they have to deal with lack of resources in their classroom, all of those things are, to me, things that should be calls to action for me and all of us. And so that really was a catalyst for me to think about what's next and how do I reconcile the fact that there are two cities within a single region. So much of what I do today goes back to that experience with my students and realizing how innately brilliant they were, but just how our systems weren't designed to nurture that brilliance.
There's a Buckminster Fuller quote. Are you familiar with him? He says that you can't necessarily redesign systems. You just have to tear them down and start over, right? Is the essence of that quote. And so I want to switch to since we switched to education, the education part of WePower and how you are helping to address some of those challenges and really kind of aim to rebuild those systems. Yeah,
that's I would love to read more about that. And I'm learning that more and more. We've actually have revamped some of our sort of organizational model to address that. So now moving forward, we will always start our systems change work by reimagining a system instead of just trying to poke holes through it and disrupt it in small ways. We're basically saying, let's just start from the ground up, redesign our I use redesign the same way that you're using it as well. Just transform it and redo the whole thing, and then from there build the power to get how we imagine it to become true. So that's so true. And what's been so exciting is that a lot of people want to see this happen. And so we have a group of 14 community members. We call them the Tomorrow Builders, and they all are doing work in early child education, and those 14 Tomorrow Builders have now grown into thousands of folks who are working to transform a system and build an entirely new system because they realize firsthand that we can't continue to to sustain broken systems and put Band-Aids on them. So that's a good quote. I would love to get that citation.
One of the questions that I have is, I was reading, I'm a big Instagram person, but I was reading online this quote that said, fighting systemic racism is relational work. Social justice is relational work. And for those of us that are in the business of breaking systems, it's tough. How do you find balance? Because a lot of it is emotionally charged. It's kind of trudging an uphill battle and constantly having obstacles that you have to try to overcome. How do you personally find balance?
Well, that's my biggest area of growth, or that's what I hear. I mean, I know it is. I can't deny it. And this has been the year that I've most leaned into practicing like self-care and well-being. I haven't gotten it right, but I'm trying. So some of the things that I'm doing and that we're actually doing at WePower, when the pandemic hit, we started offering weekly meditation for the team members and then also all of the community members that we work with. So that's been incredibly helpful, just pausing during the day to say like, I'm going to focus on myself and just be present. And then for me, journaling, trying to meditate more often, even outside of those weekly meditations. And then being outside has been the biggest game changer. Even if I step outside for like 1 minute in the middle of the day, I feel so much better and energized when I go back to sit in the office. And the other piece, it's just taking a break when I need one. So I plan trips at the very last minute when I realize I need one. I never think to plan ahead when it comes to personal well-being. So just last week, 2 weeks ago, I realized that the team, we were tired and we were getting to the point where we could have been burnt out. So we closed the office for a week and we made sure that none of us were doing work, or at least I hope none of us were doing anything. And I took a trip to Asheville, North Carolina, and tried to spend as much time outside as possible.
Oh, that sounds lovely. Thank
you.
It's time.
Is it time?
It is time for the lightning round.
Oof.
Okay.
This is my favorite part. I mean, I love the conversations, but the lightning round? Okay, you ready? What is a defining moment in your life and how did it impact you?
A defining moment for me is when I was robbed at gunpoint on my front porch. So I was home from college one holiday season, and I had just, my birthday's around the same time as well as Christmas, and I had just returned from shopping for Christmas gifts, and I had hands full of bags, and just jolly and making my way up the stairs, and someone came out of nowhere, and by the end of my conversation with the person, he said, "Never mind," and walked away. And then it turns out he had actually robbed like 4 or 5 other people around the neighborhood within that week. And so I ended up having to testify in court along with other folks. And so I wrote this super naive and hopeful letter saying, basically, don't lock him up. There should be some more rehabilitative like solutions, because I had found out he lived the exact same address as me, but the street over, and we were the same age. We had, in many ways, the same sort of life path, but at some point we diverged and went different ways. And for me, that was a wake-up call that I was living with a lot of privilege, and that our neighborhood and the systems that inform our neighborhood weren't designed to support our well-being. And so for me, I still think about him and where he is today, and the fact that my life is on a different course, and it just makes me feel deeply obligated to do this work and make sure that things don't happen by chance.
What do you spend too much time doing?
Probably formatting Google Docs. I'm anal.
That's what interns are for.
I know, but it's something about a good, nicely formatted document. It might be therapeutic for me, and I may not have realized it until now.
Whatever your therapy is. Speaking of which, what do you want to let go of?
Probably formatting Google Docs. I don't want to let go of it, but I need to.
Delegation.
Yes. Yes.
What do you dream of achieving one day? Can't be the same answer.
All right, now I have to get creative. I would say a totally transformed North St. Louis. It being a place that is the mecca of Black and Latinx culture, where you can walk outside and see all the businesses that that drive a neighborhood. I can walk outside and go to my favorite restaurant, and that's to my right. I can walk to the left and hang out at the park. I can access things that aren't available at this point, but also have a deep sense of community where I know my neighbors and they know me. And there's just this intense and a high level of joy and sense of like family. And that's all supported by systems that are supporting our well-being. Because I think a lot of that is true. I know my neighbors and we love each other and there is a sense of joy, but that there's a resilience joy. Like we're navigating circumstances and systems that are not safe and they're dangerous. So I want that to be true, but also to know that it's not because of resilience, but because we're able to live freely and things are as beautiful as our resilience.
Last question. What question would you ask a fortune teller?
What would be true about this country if it was still the land of indigenous folks?
Ooh. You know, I was thinking about that this morning as I was walking by the Mississippi, and they've got, you know, the history, and that's a great question.
And it is their land, but if
they still kept it and we didn't take it over.
Yeah.
Something to think about.
Because we're all immigrants.
Maybe in a what's that?
Alternate reality.
Alternate universe. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that'd be cool.
If
Like
you're
it's probably
sci-fi
right there.
fan, right?
Yeah. I just became one. That's new.
What's your favorite sci-fi?
Oh, well, it's very new. I guess Black Panther, is that considered sci-fi? Yeah, I'm not
Afrofuturism. So
No,
yeah,
but it's good.
That's
I'm
definitely
not a real
subgenre.
sci-fi person, so I
So
don't
no
know.
Star Wars, Star Trek,
no.
Black Mirror, like none of that.
No.
Stargate SG-1.
No.
Sci-fi. Yeah.
Clearly.
Yeah. I'm the only one in my family who isn't a sci-fi person.
Okay. Okay.
Charli, how can people get in touch with you, whether it be social media, WePower, the website, all that good stuff?
Yeah, so visit wepowerstl.org, and if you go there, you can see our social media handles, and we're office or housed out of Cortex, so we're in the district right outside or right inside of the Central West End.
Awesome.
Well, thank you. This was fun.
Thank you. Thanks for having
Good
me.
stuff. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to Innovation City. If you like this episode, you can find more episodes at innovationcity.co or anywhere where you watch or listen to podcasts. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and we'll see you next week.
This is where it all begins, so say goodbye to all your fears, all your doubts. This is where they die. This is where we come.